Hey guys, what's up? It is week 459. Have some reviews for you. The first one up is a 4K release from MVD Rewind, and this is Rockers. This is kind of an odd film here, and this is I think, probably the second Jamaican movie that I've seen. I might have seen more, but this is the second one that comes to mind. Of course, the first one I saw was Harder They Come, which is a really good crime Jamaican film, really interesting look at, the time and a place in a country that is often overlooked in cinema. So Rockers is kind of more of that deal, but it's more in focused on music. But there is a crime element as well in Rockers. And listen to the special features. There was a slew of them. You got a little bit of how this movie was made and the certain ways they were made and the actors and whatnot. It was kind of a loose script with dialogue that was written like it's kind of how am I going to say this? A script that had a story, but it was willing to change and bend because the people that are in the film aren't real actors. A lot of them are musicians along that lines, and famous in their scenes or at least prolific in their scenes and whatnot. And they kind of just patch this movie together. I don't want to say patch like it's an insult or anything of that nature because it's not, but they kind of just brought this movie together and did kind of like one take wide takes. They didn't make sure it was a bunch of different coverage and whatnot. So it's kind of just what they get is what they get to a certain extent. And knowing that, the movie turned out pretty competent. It's a pretty well made, interesting film. So I guess the main character be Horsemouth, and he is a drummer, and he's kind of struggling. He saves up all his money in the very beginning of the film, asking people who owe him money, his wife, and also borrowing money to buy kind of a motorbike so he can get involved deeper in the music scene, go play gigs, also get a chance to sell records to other people amongst that. And this is where he kind of meets this kind of rich guy who is a Jamaican guy who is on the island. He has a daughter. He's really corrupt and just a horrible kind of person, which is kind of the par for the course in almost any kind of culture, right? There's always somebody that's involved with like crimes and is also just corrupt but has money. So he gets involved with him kind of indirectly. Somebody steals his bike and he ends up getting his bike back, and that kind of leads to this somewhat Robin Hood kind of style tale. The movie kind of seems to go places to places, but it's also like a slice of life movie introducing all these different kind of characters amongst, like kind of the ghettos of Jamaica and all that kind of stuff like that. There's tons of music in here, tons of performances. It did kind of remind me of the one that Arrow put out a little bit ago that was directly involved with the graffiti and the music scene of that time from New York. It's definitely in that kind of nature, right? But it's also a look at MVD is very good. That was Arrow, but it's all distributed by MVD. They're very much focused on a lot of music. They distribute tons and tons of music, so they do have a heavy focus on that kind of music-oriented films. And this is an interesting one, and it's not just a movie made solely for music. It's also kind of a learning experience. A lot of these movies that I watch, some particular companies like Cult Epics will release these movies that, there's different cultures that not necessarily so, available to Western audience in film or in anything for that nature. Everything's available, but people just don't seek it out. More likely to learn about it or experience it in film. And I think that this one is pretty much that too. Rockers has grown kind of like a cult item. And the director is kind of an odd guy too. He's a Greek director. So he kind of said, I had kind of I don't want to say like a get out of jail free card going in there. It's so much usually like your typical like, hey, I'm a middle class rich kind of white guy making this movie in this other country and kind of filming them. But I guess that he just got a little bit more closer to the people, or wasn't as looked down upon as maybe just your typical middle class rich guy or something going making a movie in a different country and kind of filming it. But there's tons of people on the special features talking about the movie. Let's talk down and break down the special features because there's a slew of them. We have an audio commentator with the director, of course, and then we also have John No Dead, The Making of Rockers, feature-length documentary. This is longer than the movie. This is like an hour and 50 minutes, featuring interviews with Eugenie Bafaloukos, and then we also have Todd Casflow, Kidius I, Eddie Martez, and many more. There's tons of people in here. This is almost 2 hours long, and they do mention that a lot of the people that are involved with the film did pass away, and they talk about their history and their lives and who they got along with, and the differences, how they treat their spouses in Jamaica, and all that kind of stuff like that. Archival interviews with writer, director, and producer, music videos, poster gallery, theatrical trailer, radio spots. So if you're a big fan of this film, or you're into music or Jamaican culture, culture, I think that this one would really interest you. If you like Harder They Come, which I do, I think it's a really good film. I do prefer that because it has more of a crime element, and I kind of like that idea too. But this is like the music-oriented Harder They Come, more focused on the music. But I would recommend it. 4K Blu-ray kind of double disc here. Check it out. Tons of features on the Blu-ray, and the 4K has the movie and the commentary. Next, we are moving to the Wicked Games box set here, the final film, 3 films by Robert Hossein, and we're going to talk about A Taste of Violence right here. And this is, I guess, they list as the first Zapata Western. And the Zapata is like a subgenre of Westerns, you know, kind of like the Mexican kind of revolution. So, like, they mentioned a Wild Bunch, or, you know, Fistful of Dynamite would be another one. So, this kind of, this subgenre here, and it stars Robert Hossein himself, and it also stars a familiar face, if anybody's watched this channel before, Mario Adorf, who is a German, like, Italian actor. He's in a slew of great films, like Bird with the Crystal Plumage, and he's in a bunch of the Fernando Del Leo crime films. He's in one of them predominantly. I cannot remember the title of that one. He's spectacular in that. He does a voice in Fila Day, which is also an exceptional movie. So yeah, A Taste of Violence. So the first 2 films in this set, you know, they're kind of like a fugitive kind of prisoner kind of love triangle, really strong film, and The Wicked Go to Hell. The second one's A Blonde in the White Car, which is kind of a film noir femme fatale film. And then the last one here, I think, was probably the most impressive. Robert Hossein stars as this kind of guy who's working under a general, and they're trying to kidnap the the president, the guy who's in charge's daughter, and kind of ransom her off for money or whatever. He's just listening to his superior, and he's doing it with Mario Adorf, who is kind of a guy around his age and doesn't necessarily see the point in what they're doing at a certain point, and a younger guy. And these 3 guys at first seem to be all for the cause when we see the opening, the kind of, you know, execution of the soldiers that they're fighting against. And these 3 are going to lead this woman kind of incognito, hidden, and eventually take it to the general and hopefully get a bargaining chip. On the way, they have a lot of, they run into other soldiers and things of that nature, and they start to form relationships with this woman, especially a couple of them, which is going to lead to, you know, violence, a taste of it, if you will. And that's kind of that element here, right, where I thought we were going to get more like the love triangle kind of aspects, more like his other 2 films, but it doesn't necessarily go there. And this one, I will say, is probably the best shot. It's beautifully shot. It's incredibly, you know, well done. The cinematography is fantastic, and there's these haunting, almost surreal scenes that are like next level artistic. And the other 2 films are very well done, but this one, I think, is leaps and bounds in the terms of a technical aspect. There are some scenes in here where the camera's just going closer to Robert Hossein. He's standing there, and they're like zooming back and doing these weird things and cutting back and forth, where I was like, this is incredibly impressive and incredibly unique, I think, for the time, that I really wasn't expecting. I thought this was a fantastic film. There's another iconic imagery or scene, if you will, where the character's walking down this kind of in this small this kind of village, and I don't want to spoil everything, but it's kind of an awful reveal. But I really do like the interest that the characters have. They're intelligent characters, they're well thought out characters, and how they would take this. And I think that the way they think and the way they act is fairly realistic to a certain extent and enjoyable. Excellent movie, and good features as well. Tim Lucas comes back and does another commentary on here. Good information. Always good to have Tim Lucas on a commentary. Intelligent guy. But we also had appreciation by filmmaker and Western authority Alex Cox, of course, a big authority on Western films, also a director. Interview with author C. Courtney Joyner, who's also a filmmaker himself. A Taste of Violence and Zapata Western subgenre, 26 minutes. I loved hearing this because he talks about how early this is, other kind of Zapata Westerns and all that kind of thing like that. And, you know, it's a great subgenre that I never registered. I was like, oh, I love those movies of that nature, and I never really thought that they all are kind of in their own subgenre. The term Zapata I've heard, but I never really ever put much thought to it because I'm just a dullard. But as far as the commentary, I enjoyed that because, you know, Tim Lucas is pointing out the connections between Sergio Leone and Robert Hossein, and he talks a little bit about his life, of course. But excellent movie and a really great set by a director that I had seen in movies and didn't even register because as an actor I'd seen the guy before, and he's a good actor, and I didn't know he was necessarily a filmmaker, and I thought they were all fantastic. The Wicked Go to Hell, Nude in the White Car, and A Taste of Violence. Great set from Radiance Films, Wicked Games. I'd recommend checking this one out by Radiance Films. Good stuff. As we end the box set from Radiance Films, we are going to begin another one, and this is the Japanese Godfather trilogy here. Now, these are 3 films from the 70s, 77 to 78, all ranging to about 2 hours and 10 minutes, 2 hours and 20 minutes long. And we're going to start with the first one from 1977, Japanese Godfather, known as Japan's Don as well. And yes, this is an exceptional film here. I love the Japanese crime films, the Yakuza films, all that kind of stuff like that. And this kind of fits in line with what Radiance Films does. They put out a lot of Japanese crime and samurai films and always do a fantastic job with the releases. But this is a series that I never really heard of. Of course, you hear of the Battles Without Honor and Humanity and New Battles Without Honor and Humanity and all these other kind of Japanese Yakuza films and crime films. But the Japanese Godfather series is just something that I've never particularly heard about. I mean, I don't know how big of a film it is, or maybe it's just a blind spot for me, but I thought this was exceptional, the first film in here. So it does definitely share some similarities to The Godfather. Even the theme in it kind of reminded me of The Godfather. And it's definitely a lot about family and keeping that family life and that crime life separate. That's a huge kind of theme within this movie. That crime and family element completely separated here. And if you've ever seen a lot of these Japanese Yakuza films or samurai films, especially the crime films, there is a kind of a amount of actors that they pop up in these things. Like Bunta Sugawara and Sonny Chiba and other people of that nature, and tons of other familiar faces that I'm not going to name their names because I will butcher them, but they're all in here, and they're all such good character actors with such memorable faces and good demeanors. I love this movie, and like I said, you don't feel the runtime. It's one of those ones that goes by really quick. So we have this Japanese Don, and part of the plot is as follows. They're as companies, they're kind of fighting over territory. This is where their territory is, and they're working. This one corporation's pretty large, this criminal organization, and they're kind of stepping in maybe a little out of line. They may just kind of contract deal with this other company, but they're building over in this other area, so that upsets but the Shigawara's kind of gang, and of course there's going to be a clash, there's going to be casualties and all that nature. At the same time, we're dealing with the Japan, the Don's kind of his family life, his wife, but more so his daughters, one who's getting married to the doctor, who kind of is the Al Pacino character of this film, I would say, and he fills those shoes, that kind of guy who's not meant for this crime life but ends up becoming a big part of the family, and I feel like in the sequels he'll probably become a bigger part of it. And also the young daughter, who is kind of a loose cannon. She goes out and she does things that she shouldn't do. She's just a troublemaker of that nature, so that's a huge component of it as well. But Sonny Chiba in this movie is an absolute madman, just such a great cult actor, but he's just intense. That intensity that he brings in here, and he's got these big glass sunglasses, and he's just freaking intense. And I love the kind of general, the chief under the Don is a fantastic actor. He just always I don't know how to say this without sounding weird or rude, but now in this movie, he's one of those guys that just has that face that says, I am the walking embodiment of cancer. He's just always so stressed out and just seems so run down, but also he's just such a good performance in here. I thought this was a fantastic movie. I'm looking forward to watching the rest of them. And it does have these violent moments, these violent outbursts like a lot of the Yakuza films do have. And that's one thing that I've noticed about the Japanese films from this time, from the 60s and 70s. They'll be really quiet, and there won't be much that happens. And then when the violence happens, it's really kind of boom and very fast. And I think the violence in this one is more like American director would be like John Milius, like when Dillinger, right, where there's innocent bystanders at times that get shot. That happens a couple times in here, and I always felt that was a nice touch to crime films, just to add that danger, and happens in Pulp Fiction as well. But it reminds me that Milius would mention that too in his films. Innocent bystanders do get shot and these kind of things, and he shows it, that little sense of realism in there. But fantastic movie, shot really well acted. I do find it kind of funny that they do like scenes beat for beat occasionally with like a head in the bed without spoiling everything, and the Al Pacino style character, the wedding scene is a lot of it, guys. It's a lot of it, but it is called The Japanese Godfather. And in the early 70s, The Godfather was such a hit, and the first sequel, that there's so many of these movies that the Japanese Godfather, this Godfather, that crime element, and even American films like the Valachi Papers, was that the Charles Bronson kind of mob film, were coming out and everything like that, to kind of make some money off The Godfather, make their own kind of interpretation of the material. As far as special features on this disc itself, there's only one, and it's a pretty lengthy archival interview with Sadao Nakajima, who is a director, talking about his falling in and falling out with a certain actor in the film. But yeah, highly recommended. Great set. Look forward to watching part 2 next week. Next one here is from Deaf Crocodile. Is it from Hungary, and it is an animated musical, kind of a bizarre one here. Bubble Bath, 1979. Now, Deaf Crocodile is a company that focuses in a lot of animation, a lot of Eastern European cinema, and I think that Eastern European cinema is very hard sometimes for me to grasp or understand or be connected to. So I'm always kind of a mixed bag on it. I usually enjoy the absurdist kind of humor stuff, but some of the other things like the animation are a little bit difficult for me to kind of digest. But this one here, Bubble Bath, odd film, and listening to the commentary by Sam Deegan definitely helped me out, kind of understand a little bit more of this and have a little bit of appreciation for it. But totally, at the end of the day, this one's not necessarily for me. But it kind of follows three kind of characters here. But the cool thing about it is, it's an animated movie, but the animations, when people become the animated part of the film, it's over exaggerated, kind of showing the nervousness or whatever feelings, the inward emotions that they're saying through their voice outwardly in their animated postures, which is really cool. And it does break into musicals a few times here and there. But what we have here is this kind of intelligent woman who's studying to be a doctor, wants to be a doctor, and she has this, her best friend's husband comes over on their wedding day. They're supposed to be married, and he's really nervous about it, and he's starting to plead to her that I don't know what to do, I don't want to marry her. He's trying to make up these kind of childish excuses and whatnot, and he starts to kind of really kind of feelings for her as well. But it gets more complicated when the wife decides to drop by. So a lot of this stuff is kind of like breaking down these feelings of growing up, emotion, marriage, children, all that kind of stuff like that through the eyes of this wacky, weird musical that's visually doing these bizarre things and these kind of strange songs and whatnot. Sam Deegan breaks all this stuff down and talks about it through the context of, Hungary being kind of a satellite country of the Soviet Union and what was allowed and what wasn't allowed and how they could sneak around and infiltrate and do these kind of strange things like this. This director also is pretty known for like abstract art and short films, and I'm not 100% sure how I like abstract art at my certain point in age and whatnot. Sometimes I do enjoy certain aspects of it, but I think that an entire film abstract is a lot for me to take. His short films on here are pretty wild, pretty crazy. A lot of art being drawn into these films and these weird things of that nature. They're definitely very Eastern European kind of art, abstract art, paintings, beautiful to look at. But a lot of the times I get headaches when I try to think of everything that's going on in them or what they're supposed to mean. Hell, sometimes they're abstract, sometimes they don't mean anything, and that could be the meaning of it as itself. Who knows? But the animation is a little wicked and weird and kind of crazy, but if you enjoy this kind of stuff, then you might enjoy Bubble Bath. As far as the special features, we have a commentary by Sam Deegan, new essay by film historian and Professor Jennifer Lynn Barker, interview with Bubble Bath composer Janos Masklik, 2021, that's 7 minutes. Restoring Bubble Bath, 9 minutes here. Fascinating look at the restoration of the Hungarian animated classic, featuring interviews with György Radoko, director of National Film Institute and the NFI film archivist. Then we have 5 short films, rare short films, monologue, 12 minutes, Metamorphosis, Wavelengths, Nights in Boulevard, and A Memory of the Summer. So, and yeah, there we go. All the above short films in Hungarian with English subtitles. So this is in Hungarian. But interesting oddball film. I don't know if I could give it a wholehearted recommend, but I think most people that are into animation that will watch the trailer, see clips, and be like, I think that I would dig that. I know that my friend Tyler Tadeo had this rated fairly high. And, so if you are into artistic, bizarre films, or maybe even abstract art, then you might dig this one. Okay, this next one from 88 Films is She Shoots Straight, 1990, directed by Yuen, who did like Woman on the Run. He did tons of movies. Hero, I feel like a Yes Madam, Righting Wrongs. Fantastic director, one of the lucky stars, along with guys like Sammo Hung, Jackie Chan, and Yuen Biao. Yuen Biao is actually not in this one. He's in the next movie. I get confused sometimes, but Sammo Hung is in this one. So this is also, listening to the commentary was great because it's Frank Jin, and he pointed out this is a retelling of the Yang's family dynasty kind of in modern times. And I have seen the movie that I know is 14 Amazons, so Shaw Brother movies, kind of tells that story, right, of the all kind of female-led dynasty that went into battle and kind of came out as winners and stuff of that nature. So this is kind of this done in more of a modern time. What we have is this kind of police family here, which this is a exceptional opening here. So what we have is this wedding in the very beginning, and the only son of this family, he has 4 sisters, the mother's there, Sammo Hung's related as well, I think, as like a godfather godfather, or their dad was a godfather to them. So there's the mom and there's the 4 daughters, and then we have this. She's this woman that's being married into the family to their brother, and all of them are cops. The mom's not, but everybody else is a cop. So it's a family of cops. The 4 sisters, the wife, and the husband. They're all cops here, and they're pretty good at their jobs. It's a family line of cops and whatnot. So there's definitely some tension amongst the wife and some of the sisters. The sisters don't really like her. They don't think she's good enough for the brother, and she has a higher kind of ranking than the other kind of girls, because in the very beginning of the film, these terrorists try to kidnap I think it's a Indian princess, and we have this elaborate, amazing kind of chase scene shootout where they're killing all these guys, and it's just brutal. And if you guys know Hong Kong action, it's always intense. I mean, brutal in the stunts, like they're falling out of cars and driving and chasing and doing these things that are completely unsafe but amazing to watch in this kind of action flick. Corey Yuen is really good with that kind of stuff. Obviously this is Sammo Hung's company and he's in it, so all these people probably definitely had a hand in it. So this stuff is always just like expert level amazing. And as I always say, once you watch Hong Kong action movies from a certain period, there's really no going back to more modern day action films. It's just really hard for me to watch them or even care about them. It's like there's no cars in this, there's no shooting in this, there's no backflips in this, and it's all done and it looks amazing. So the main kind of plot of the film, right? So we have that aspect. They're to kind of stop this group of Vietnamese kind of criminals that are kind of coming in here. This big group of Vietnamese criminals have kind of moved in. There's like 4 or 5 kind of head ones that are in there, but these guys are going to rob this kind of ladies club. It's a fancy ladies club kind of deal, and although the police women are going to kind of be in disguise as these kind of what do they call the girls? Not the hostess kind of girls that sit with the customers and whatnot. Sometimes get inappropriately groped and all that kind of nature like that. And what happens is one of the sisters blows the whole thing, and there's a giant, massive shootout, and people die on both sides. Cops get killed, and some of the Vietnamese people get killed, and this angers the leader of the Vietnamese people, and he decides to get revenge on the cops. And people die really tragically. There is an incredibly long, depressing, sad scene of the family mourning the loss of someone, but of course they're going to get revenge, even if some of the police chiefs are against them. It's going to be no holds barred. They're going to get revenge, and the big kind of main fight scene, their ending kind of climactic thing, one of them at least happens on a boat with a lot of badass stuff here, and it has that same kind of yes madam quality, right, with Cynthia Rothrock and Michelle Yeoh in that film, where they're like at each other's throats the whole time, but when push comes to shove and they're bonded by the hate of one character or the loss of something, they become like best friends. And there's this really awesome scene in that film, and there's this kind of same camaraderie in this one. And Corey Yuen does the same damn thing in Women on the Run, right? We have the kind of, I think she's a prostitute, and the policewoman, who are from 2 different worlds, but they suffer this stuff and they come together to get the revenge. And I'm really enjoying this director's works. I've seen probably 7, 8 of his movies, and they're really good, and this one is no different. Great action, great characters, great drama, absolutely fantastic. We have a commentary on here by Frank Jin, who's absolutely fantastic, and we have interview scriptwriter Yuen Kao Chi, alternate English credits, and Hong Kong trailer. We can I think this one is in English as well, Chinese and English. Of course, I watched it in Cantonese. I feel like Cantonese is the appropriate way to watch this. Good baddies too, and that's always a plus. Memorable, mean-looking fucking baddies, which I love. But and then the end fight scene between our lead here, who's an actress I've seen in a couple things. Our lead actress here, and the other kind of female villain is great. Love it. But also need to mention the girl from the kind of weird police academy style Hong Kong movies that are comedic. There's like 4 of them. She's in here as one of the sisters as well. Always memorable. But highly recommend this one. And Sammo Hung does throw down. It's a short piece. It's a beautiful piece. And Frank Jin's smart about it. He says, it was to highlight the women in here, and he doesn't try to steal their thunder. He's got the small scene, and it's really well done, and that's that. Frank Jin's one of the best. He tells you all the the box office reports and all the actors and actresses in the film and all these things of that nature, and who's passed away and when and all that kind of thing like that. But Corey Yuen has passed away, unfortunately, but he was a great director, and this was a great film. Highly recommended. She Shoots Straight. Great. Love that title too. She Shoots Straight. But you could do a lot worse in Hong Kong action movies, but you couldn't do that much worse because they're all pretty fucking good. Okay, this next one is also from 88 Films, and this is Picture of a Nymph. And listening to the commentaries, David Chang and Frank Jin, two different commentaries, they kind of mentioned this is kind of a remake or a redo of the Chinese ghost story, which I have seen and I really like. It's been a while, though, and it definitely felt a little different. Some of the same actors do appear in this one. This is directed by Wu Ma, who is an actor in Hong Kong films. He's done over like 250, 300 movies. He's in everything. But he's also directed damn near 45 movies as well, which I've covered a bunch of on here, including The Dead and Deadly from 82, fun Sammo Hung movie here. But this one here, this does star Yuen Biao, who I love, and Wu Ma is in here as well. If I'm not mistaken, I believe that's him as the kind of, yeah, that's Wu Ma right there as the old man here. So in the very beginning of this movie, we have this child who's kind of given away, sent down a river, and we have this guy who finds him, and we kind of understand that this guy has been raised as kind of like a magic user to kind of go against like evil ghosts and the master and train under him and amongst that. At the same time, we have this scholar who is a book writer, and he loves writing and whatnot, and one day they are both stopped by Yuen Biao stops by his house for some reason. I can't necessarily remember if he followed somebody there or he's stopping by for a short period, but this long-haired kind of evil ghost who's disguised as an old man kind of stumbles into the house, and our scholar doesn't realize it, that he's a ghost, and we have this fun little elaborate fight scene with the long hair kind of shooting out. It reminds me of Zoo Warriors from 83, the Troy Hark movie, right, with the hair kind of attacking and stuff. So we have that kind of elaborate kind of fight scene here. And his house burns down, nowhere else to stay. He ends up staying with Yuen Biao, who's playing as a deaf kind of character. He plays as a mute character at first. He's lying, though. And when his master comes back, he's unhappy, but he lets our scholar stay with him. At the same time, we have these two kind of ghosts, one of which who has this kind of bond with, they seem to have bonds with both the kind of characters here. And they seem to be good ghosts. And Wu Ma is somebody who doesn't believe in good ghosts. But there's also these evil kind of ghosts that are scurrying about and want to put curses on there, and they actually want something that these people have. So that's kind of what they're after, and this kind of obviously puts a tension between the good ghost being manipulated by the bad ghost and the bad ghost trying to attack, and it's all going to end in this kind of big fantastical, romantic kind of fantasy fight scene, which is a lot of fun in exactly kind of the detail you'd expect in these kind of late 80s Golden Harvest fantasy horror kind of comedy kind of style films. Romantic one though, for sure, and a lot of these kind of ghost stories have this romantic flair about them, these ghost stories from this time. Big time, for sure. Even the one I'm going to talk about from 83 has that as well. And a comedy of errors as well, is although not as silly as something like Fake Ghost Snatchers or something from 82. But it does have its comedic elements, and it is fun. Yuen Biao's great in it. Always great. Always good character. Always good performances in here. Good action. Solid action. Great effects. Not as horror-oriented as some people would like, but this is a very enjoyable, fun movie with good characters and a great romantic set piece at the very end and a touching ending, which I really enjoyed. As far as the special features are concerned, we have two commentaries on here. We have the Cantonese, and we have it in Cantonese with English subs. Audio commentary, Frank Jin, of course, great commentary. Audio commentary by David West, also a good commentary. He's also excellent. I always tell how good Frank Jin is, but David West is also really strong and really good. So I thought this one was a lot of fun. I'm never going to say no to the fantasy kind of elements or fantasy kind of horror films from Hong Kong either. I love the action, but these ones are good too. And there's this really funny scene where there's a spell put on our scholar, and he's walking through the kind of the graveyard, and this woman he doesn't know is a ghost, and we have that element, right, in a lot of classic Japanese too, like the ghosts want a lover. In Hong Kong and Japanese films, the ghosts are there, even just Asian cinema in particular, right, the ghost kind of wants to come to life and find a lover and take them back, but of course they're going to die. There's that classic ghost story I cannot remember from Japan where, right, they put the spells on the door and you can't let the ghost in, or they'll take you with them. But it's just so many of these movies. It's so prevalent in all these kind of Asian ghost stories, right? But of course, there are these evil ghosts that want to kind of suck the life out of you and whatnot, and find this partner. But our ghosts some of them are good in here. But we have this element where it's like this woman's acting blind, and she's like touching the scholar, and he doesn't know it's a ghost, and she's like, "Oh, let me find my eyes," and puts these big googly eyes on her, starts chasing him. That's kind of a fun scene. But overall, looks great, sounds great. A picture of a nymph. All right, guys, let's get into those 1983 movies.
I have returned. where is the music now? The sound of laughter. There was never laughter.
What's it like?
What's what like?
Screwing a psycho.
God blows dead dogs. Just lay it in there.
Eat shit and die, Ricky.
Eat shit and live, Bill.
Yeah, Bill, he's a little wet.
31. 32. 32. Year of a man's prime. Loved by many women. He might still learn to swim. 32. Going. Gone.
The kid was cut in half, Arnie. They had to scrape his legs up with a shovel.
Well, isn't that what you're supposed to do with shit? Scrape it up with a little shovel?
One final moment of revenge.
Wondering what's real. All of it is real.
You want to see something really scary?
You bet.
Really?
Yeah.
Get the Videodrome! Long live the new flesh!
No choice but to kill the son of a bitch.
Living one's entire life in a state of fear. It is all I have ever known. Fear.
Are you ready?
Okay, go ahead. What are you doing?
The first up is the most bizarre, probably, of the movies. Maybe not. And this is 1983's, of course, the Wisconsin weird slasher film Bloodbeat. Now, this is an oddball movie. It's a Christmas movie. It's a regional horror movie. It's made by a foreign French director in Wisconsin. Oh boy, it's also supernatural aspects like, telepathy and telekinesis. So all sorts of weird shit going on here. And it's also got like that Wisconsin regional charm. So, and I imagine it's a killer samurai in the middle of Wisconsin. Who the fuck does this weird shit? I don't know, but it's entertaining nonetheless. So what we have here is, we have this kind of a couple that are older, the wife has never remarried, but this guy she's been living with, and she's an artist, and the kids are coming to visit her kids, and a daughter and a son, and the son's going to bring this girlfriend with him that he's been dating for a while. So right when they show up, weird shit starts happening. The mom is partially psychic, maybe has these kind of energies, and this new girlfriend seems to have something of that nature as well. Maybe them coming together creates this kind of riff where something within the house comes to life, and it's just samurai, this evil samurai, and it starts to basically go around this Wisconsin woods and forest area and starts to kill people. Hilarious, weird characters. Guys who argue with their wives about making them tea while she puts it on the bed in one of the trays, and the tea's just spilling all over the fucking place, but nobody acknowledges it. But just weird kind of characters like that. The samurai's picking people off. There is a weird scene, deer hunting scene. And to be honest, the first time I saw this movie, I didn't like it. It was one of those ones like, this is stupid and weird, and I feel like people are being facetious when they watch it. Like, this is a great movie. But rewatching it, I kind of just fell into the weird, absurd, nonsense of it all, and I was like, this guy's just an odd director. He's not making this to be bad. He's not thinking this is a masterpiece. He's just making a real oddball weird film because the guy's just a weird oddball guy, I think. And the end result is just this kind of bizarre film. And that I ended up really enjoying. The weird music, the playing the classical ba da 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 at the end, completely unironically. It's just so weird and so bizarre. And the idea that a samurai is doing the killing is definitely worth watching. And it has the poor sound effects it makes, these weird electronic haunting sound effects. I enjoy this one, and it has a pretty graphic sex scene which comes out of there, which comes out like not out of anywhere, but you're like, oh wow, that's in here. It's actually showcased on the cover there, and it's one of those weird sex scenes where it's like it's never like the most like super polished like Hollywood sex scenes that are always the best. It's always like these ones where like that's actually a solid sex scene. I've always thought Troma had good sex scenes, even if they are gross. I'm always like, I feel like Troma's, you're definitely feeling this in here, like in like Terra Firma or something, or Tromeo and Juliet. But yeah, this one here, I enjoyed it this time around. It's just weird and bizarre, and I think it is a fun oddity. As far as the features, newly scanned and restored in 4K from 35 original camera, commentary track with the director, video interview with the director, video interview with Vladimir Van Maud, the cinematographer, Blood Beats, silent version 28 minutes, featuring Nervous Curtains and Horror Remix, still gallery, slipcover designed by Earl Kessler, reversible cover art, English subtitles. There we go. Super bizarre movie. It's everything you heard about it. Just incredibly weird ass movie. Definitely check it out. Okay, and the next one from 1983 is Esprit d'Amour, directed by Ringo Lam, which is real wild to me because Ringo Lam mostly, did a lot of action films that I had seen a couple of here and there. So him doing a fantasy kind of horror romance flick is bizarre, the comedy kind of deal here. But yeah, this is one of my ones I got import from Hong Kong, and I really enjoyed this damn thing. So here we go. It's kind of like a lot of the contemporary stories, they do kind of follow this suit where it's like a haunting, but it's also like a love story at the same time here. So what we have here is this poor woman dies tragically. She's on top of her roof with her daughter, and she slips on a skateboard. She's really young, and she falls to her death. And at the same time, we have this insurance adjuster, and he's playing with like a weird Ouija board that the whole family has, and they're doing this asking for a spirit that just died. And of course, this woman's the one who kind of comes through and ends up like attaching herself to him. But through basically her manipulating the tactics, he ends up getting her case where he is told by his boss, rule it as suicide so we don't have to pay out, don't rule it as an accident. So at first he's going to do that, but the ghost starts to kind of manipulate things and make his life a living hell, and even his boss's life a living hell, till he does the right thing. And of course this causes him to lose his job, but it gains him a love interest in this kind of ghost woman, and they start to have this relationship. At the same time, he has a really awful kind of, it's almost like a predestined marriage or something like this. His family, his mom has put him through all this and has want this woman to marry him, and she's very controlling and very mean. But that's kind of the aspect here, right? This girlfriend that's bossy and kind of belittles him every chance she gets. He doesn't really want anything to do with it, but he falls in love with this ghost woman, and they have this wonderful kind of romance and whatnot until tragedy's going to strike, right? Because the family thinks that something's got a hold of them that shouldn't. Ghost and men and women ghost or whatever should never be together. They're from two different worlds, as in, a picture of a nymph kind of post out as well, right? But it has gets really big in the terms of special effects. Like the whole apartment building is like crumbling on the inside, like walls falling down and people getting sucked out windows. And I was like, oh, this became very impressive in terms of effects and budget. But overall, I think this is a really cute, fun movie that I enjoyed immensely. The dad character is really funny. The brother character is really funny. The mom, all the characters are solid and fun. The boss is a character actor you've seen in tons and tons of these movies. And he also has a fun scene where he basically gets like taken over, which is a very common trope in ghost films, and he's like kind of running for public office, and they make him say, I think we should legalize whorehouses. And it's just a funny scene. And, of course, Hong Kong thinks it's absolutely hilarious when you have a masculine man be overtaken, and now he's all sort of kind of like being controlled by a woman, so he's somewhat feminine. They did that like the Indian films, too. They always have like a overly, just a overly feminine character in their 80s films. Like, isn't this hilarious? It's like, I don't know. Like, whatever you guys think, but it's just a dated humor that was funny at the time, but still sometimes works, sometimes it doesn't. This time I think it works. In the Indian film, I can't think of the one I watched not necessarily, but overall I thought the Esprit Amour was great. There is one special feature interview with I think the director on here, interview with Raymond Wong, who I think is one of the leads in here. Yes, but it doesn't have subtitles, so you can't watch that. But overall, this has subtitles. You can watch it in English with Cantonese with English subtitles, but definitely check it out. You can watch it in Mandarin as well. And I think it's a 5.1 mix, so it sounded pretty good. Good sound mix and everything like that. Okay, here's where I become kind of a prick, I think. And this is from The Magic, Myth, and Mutilation, the films of Michael J. Murphy. Now, I've watched a couple of his films so far, going through the 80s, Death in the Family from 81, which was a fun kind of gothic horror thriller. And then we did the one short he did, which was the satanic one that I thought was pretty damn good. I can't think of it. I think it's his best movie so far. I'll see the title. The Last Night, is it? I can't remember which one it is. Last Night might be The Invitation to Hell. Last Night's the one that I have to rewatch for this year. It's another short he did. But Invitation to Hell is a great satanic kind of horror film. Now, Michael J. Murphy is a low-budget director from Britain, right? A very regional kind of guy, low budget. I don't know how regional, but very low budget is the term I would say. Independent director. And, after, Britain had their Hammer days and stuff like that, if you watch a lot of the early, like the 70s, late 70s or early 80s, British horror films, they're not quite up to snuff. They really never found their footing after the Amicus and Hammer days and whatnot. So they kind of have some oddball titles throughout there, like Death Shock, and they did do House of Long Shadows this year as well, with Vincent Price by Pete Walker, and the classic horror actors Cushing and Lee as well, and Carradine. But they didn't have like the power that they used to have. So Michael J. Murphy making these low budget movies through the 70s and 80s is really kind of a godsend. It's very cool that he was doing this. And some of the movies, like I said, The Invitation to Hell, I do enjoy, and even Death in the Family was okay. But I did watch Bloodstream for 85, and I absolutely hated it. And this time coming to this one, The Hereafter, or Qualen, I did not like it either. And a lot of people do seem to enjoy this one. It does have its own kind of regional charm, like the British kind of charm. For me, I keep calling it regional, but it's Britain. But and the location is fantastic. The idea behind it is, it's a gothic kind of inheritance kind of horror film, but possibly maybe ghost story as well, if you look at it like in the style of Burnt Offerings or The Shining, where the house is the actual kind of haunted entity within it. It's not just a ghost there, it's actually the entirety of the whole estate. But so what we have here is this kind of I guess you'd call him slightly nerdy kind of guy who's taking care of his invalid father in this rich house, and it's a nice beautiful estate, but he hates it there, and he's dating this fairly pretty woman who his father says, she's using you for your money, she's using you for this money and whatnot, and when I die, you're going to get it. She's why would she be with you otherwise? So through kind of this freak accident, and maybe it's possibly the house that did it, the father does die, and he decides in his will that he states that he has to stay in this home. He can't sell it. He can't move out, or he forfeits all his his possessions and money and all that kind of stuff like that. So he ends up having this woman, his wife, this girlfriend, marry him, and they move into this house, and they hire kind of a gardener and these other people that are caretakers of the house. And it turns out that there's definitely some more inheritance schemes kind of going and backstabbing. And this would make a great 25-minute episode of Tales from the Crypt. What it doesn't make is a great hour and 25-minute movie. It's incredibly tedious. And for the most part, it does feel like fairly obvious where it's going. The very end is really kind of a nice little gut punch, or a nice little twist, I guess if you could call it that. I think the twist works, especially how they set up the evil kind of room. But overall, I was incredibly bored with it. And it's not like you can watch these movies like Burnt Offerings, which maybe is a little slow for some people, but you're like, oh, you got fucking Oliver Reed and Betty Davis and Burgess Meredith and tons of other Karen Black, great actors and actresses within the film, and just professional style directing by Dan Curtis. That's just really good. And this one, I like the location, I like the general story, but overall it's just tedious and boring and wears out its welcome too damn fast. Now, they couldn't find the film elements to remaster this thing, so it looks kind of cheap as it is, but and there's not really any features that I could find on it except an alternate title, Hereafter. This is the original Qualen title cards. They have both on there, but overall I just did not care for this movie. It should have been a short. It would have been better as a short, but as a feature length, it is a tedious effort. Okay, this next one from 1983 is The Hunter from the Future, starring Reb Brown, who I love Reb Brown from, of course, Strike Commando, Uncommon Valor, Captain America, The Howling 2, Your Sister is a Werewolf. But this is directed by Antonio Margheriti, who did one of my all-time favorite horror films from the 80s, Cannibal Apocalypse, did a bunch of non-exploitation movies as well as, a bunch of gothic horror starring Barbara Steele, and he did The Hunter from the Future, which is a fucking weird movie, guys. Besides Reb Brown, you got Luigi Pigazzi in here running around in a loincloth. The whole entire movie, Luigi Pigazzi. You also have John Steiner in this damn thing. Yeah, and oh geez, who's the female in here? Oh, I don't want to forget Clarine Clary from Hitchhike. So you got a nice cast in here. You got a really strong cast in here. And I was like, what is this damn thing? I had heard that Yor is such a weird movie. It has its own theme music. It was originally being shot as a miniseries. I guess it's based off a comic. I don't know if the miniseries has ever got a wide release. So we have this film kind of here that is just kind of feels very episodic, but I can kind of understand the reason why. I love Reb Brown. Like I said, he seems like a genuinely great, sweet guy, and he's got a good, he's got a good sense of humor about all the things he was in. Some of the movies were ridiculous, not or bad, and not his fault. He's like, I used to scream a lot during this time in movies. It's not my call, just stuff like that. But Yor is a fucking weird movie. It's part prehistoric, part post-apocalyptic, kind of like Planet of the Apes style thing going on. I don't fucking know if it counts as a post-apocalyptic movie, but I've definitely thrown it in the subgenre because there's a reveal in the last act of the movie where you're like, what? But it also feels incredibly prehistoric. So Yor is kind of just, you're thrown in here and you see Yor, he's running around the mountains. He has this cool ass theme music, and he just kind of runs into all these different kind of things like dinosaurs, and he ends up kind of running into these evil kind of ape kind of characters that are fighting and killing the villagers. He ends up helping them, and that's where he runs in with Pagazzi and Clarine Clary. And they kind of have like this love interest thing going on, but their adventures are not going to be, that simple. They run into kind of weird Tusken Raider style things. In fact, this is a big Star Wars ripoff, if you haven't noticed. As they run into these kind of Tusken Raider style characters, they also run into dinosaurs. Did I mention that? And absolute ridiculous, crazy things start to happen. They run into John Steiner playing his best Darth Vader. That feels kind of like the Black Hole kind of as well. Just a weird, odd movie that never kind of slows down. It's incredibly fun. Yes, it's corny and goofy and silly, but it never stops being entertaining, and I enjoyed the damn thing through its entirety. I would recommend The Hunter from the Future. I don't know why I put off watching it for so long. Margarita is always entertaining. That's one thing I realized. And I love Pagazzi. He's in a million movies, and he worked with Margarita a bunch of times, even towards like the end of Margarita's career when he's doing stuff like Alien from the Abyss. Is it Alien from the Abyss or Alien from the Deep? One of them. But Pagazzi's got my favorite line in that. Somebody's like, "You're drunk." He's like, "You're damn right I'm drunk." I even know it's probably dubbed by somebody else. I believe I heard Nick Alexander as the dubbing guy in here too as well. But recommend Hunter from the Future. Reb Brown does a commentary, and he's pretty fun. Just kind of talking about how hard the movie shoot was, how much he got paid, and losing weight, filming this in Turkey, in the locations on Turkey, and going back to Rome, all that kind of stuff like that. Highly recommended to watch if you like fun weirdo movies. You could do a lot worse. Okay, the last one from 1983 is The Serial Rape Murderer. What a classy title. You guys get out your pervert cards. You're going to need them for this one. And this is done by the same company that is not Nakatsu, but it's the same company that put out a lot of the Hisayasu Sato movies, like Rewind and stuff of that nature. So it's kind of in line with that stuff. And I've noticed kind of the movies that aren't put out by Nakatsu here, like last year they had the Boko movie about the group of kids that went around raping all the women and stuff like that. They're just really kind of darker and seem a little bit, they're not darker, but they seem a little bit more guerrilla and dirty, if that makes any sense, because the Nakatsu movies are so well done, even though they're really kind of extreme content, but they're just very professionally done with the high budgets and artistic. But some of these ones, man, they're a little bit more rough around the edges, and the plots are a little bit more grimy and gritty. And this director actually went on to win an Academy Award, and he's early in his career making stuff like High Noon, Ripper, and this one from '83. And I have to say, this is listed as a crime drama, but I do think it's horror as well, and I think that a lot of movies that are listed as horror are less horror than this one here. So I used AI subtitles, and they've come a long way here. I'm not a fan of AI art, but I feel like AI has its place, and it's definitely a place to make AI subtitles for me, because who the hell's going to subtitle this movie for me, The Serial Rape Murderer? But yeah, so what we have here in the opening we have this kind of nasty rape scene of a schoolgirl getting raped in the woods, and we kind of pan out and we realize it's the projectionist at a porno theater watching it. I was like, that's a nice little switch right there. Automatically kind of puts you in that stage, right, as like a voyeur, right? But so you're watching that, and then it kind of pulls through, and this guy's watching it, and you're like, this is really odd. And he's talking, no one should have seen me. No one should have seen me. We see a tattoo on the rapist in the movie's leg. And we kind of fast forward, and he ends up going to the distributor and talking to them, and he says, well, where'd this movie come from? And the guy mentions a writer's name. He says it's based off real life experiences. So we come to find out that this guy was actually the person who raped that woman, and somebody witnessed it, and they wrote it down, and they had to deal with it, so they made a movie of it. But what this person doesn't know is that this rapist is going to come after the person who they think wrote it. But there's a lot of kind of different deceitful elements here, right, where the characters maybe used a pen name, and other people starting to end up getting killed and whatnot. And the person who ended up actually witnessing somebody in their life killed is out for revenge. So in a weird way, it is a rape revenge movie, but we're following this perverted projectionist who wants to completely erase and kill anybody from his past that can identify him or know him. He wants to kill anybody that knows of his past, while we have somebody else who wants to kind of settle things of their past so they can move forward in their life. It's just a great concept. It's incredibly creepy, and it reminds me and disturbing, and the way that people present their life and their feelings, and they're working through things through cinema, and this aspect coming back to bite you in the ass is just incredibly scary. It reminds me a lot of Knife Plus Heart, right? The 2016 or 18 movie that I absolutely loved, where the director in that film, he witnessed something in a movie, and the story was told, and he saw that the creation of his life, and he went out and killed the people that made it. So you're like, geez, that's so dark. But this one kind of has that element as well, that you are dealing with this trauma, so you create something to deal with this trauma, but then their person who created that trauma in the first place comes back to attack you because they've seen what you've created from the trauma they've caused. Kind of reminds me of like Bird with the Crystal Plumage, right, where we have this character who's been assaulted in the kind of the park, and somebody made a painting of that, and that person sees that assault in the painting, and it snaps them and triggers them to go out, and that violence creates violence through art. I like that concept. I think this is very much in those kind of Hisayasu Sadao movies. I think it's an excellent kind of pinky film. I don't know necessarily the details if you say these kind of, it's a pinky violence movie. It's like, that's a certain company that did that phrase or something, or the Roman pornos. It's not that, but it is definitely one of these Japanese erotica kind of disturbing films that fits in line with that. An excellent one here, The Serial Rapist Murderer. A hidden gem. I don't know. Is it horror enough to include in my top 25? If not, it will most certainly be in my best horror Jason movies. Maybe I'll just throw it in the hidden gems or something like that, but it's definitely one to look forward to. I would recommend checking out The Serial Rapist Murderer, but bring your pervert card, you're gonna need it. Okay, the last one here is my Patreon pick, and this is Cream Soda and Milk, and Ryan Cannon picked this one, another Hong Kong flick, so I can't complain. And this surprisingly shares a lot of DNA with the movie Rape and Die from 1983. Now, when you see that title, Rape and Die, you're like, oh, this is gonna be extreme rape, Cat 3 nasty movie, and that movie has some nasty bits about it, but it's more of a drama, and this one is definitely more of a drama as well. And I thought this was going to start off more as like a love story or something a little lighthearted, but no, it gets dark, it gets depressing, it gets twisted. It has kind of these elements that are a little bit more kind of dark dramatic in here as well. So Cream Soda and Milk, it is the drink that a father and son share, and they bond over, right? But what happens in the very beginning of this movie, the father and wife are going through a divorce. The husband and wife are going through a divorce, and they decide to split custody of their kids. The father will get the son, and the daughter will get, the wife will get the daughter, but they're going to move. The wife wants to better her life and start, become, make something of her life, make money, make a career. And the father wants to stay where they're at. So what happens is we kind of start falling around as we have this moment of between the father and the son of this Cream Soda and Milk, and they're bonding and all this kind of stuff like that, the kite, all this kind of like sweet stuff. And then we kind of focus on the daughter now. She's grown up and she lives with her mother, and she's dating this guy who I think he works directly in like a hospital, and he works with all these different kinds of people and stuff, always trying to help people is what I'm gathering, if I remember correctly. And he decides that they want to try to find her brother, try to find where he's at, and they start to search, and they find a guy who possibly could be her brother, and he's kind of in a darker element in his life. He doesn't have a great life, and he denies it at first, but we learn that it is him, and the father is sick, and he's been taking care of him, and he feels abandoned by all this, and he's kind of had a somewhat like shady life of crime and all these things like that, where these two families had split apart, and one had a lot of hardships, and one had prospered, and all that kind of thing like that. And this is kind of like that bonding, or this kind of coming to redemption with what you've done, and kind of trying to reconcile your relationship with these family members who have died or not died, but who've grown apart and are completely two different worlds and everything of that nature. But at the same time, we have, of course, our son, who has this relationship with this woman who's directly, in this family. And this family is the mother, the matriarch of that family, is a prostitute. She has two daughters, one who is, they're both born of that kind of, prostitution life, but one of them resents her incredibly because she's ended up being like half, I think, Indian or something of that nature, Indonesian or something along that lines, and she kind of resents her mother for it, and they have a lot of fighting and hardships, and this is also part of the story too, where they kind of are going to reconcile through tragedy and trauma and all that kind of stuff like that. So it's a story about these these families coming together even after all these horrible things have happened. That this tragedy or this trauma can bond people to a certain extent. It's a sad story. It's a touching story. It's a well done story. Cream soda and milk. It's on YouTube if you would like to check it out. If you're in the kind of Hong Kong drama films, it has its dark moments too, like the whole prostitution stuff, and there's violent aspects as well. But I would recommend it. It's a good pick. Patreon pick. Thank you, Ryan Cannon. Good stuff. All right, let's get into these questions, comments, and concerns. So first up, what do we got? The Room. Excalibur absolutely rules. I agree. Real Moody. Curious, are you interested in the Angel Guts collection from Third Window? Is it worth getting? I have it coming in the mail. I'm excited. Now, the one problem is there's 6 Angel Gut movies. This set only has 5. One of the lead actresses became popular in one of them, and she's kind of like fighting it, kind of like the American Guinea Pig, not American, but the Guinea Pig movies. That one of the actresses in that's kind of fighting the re-release of those movies. But I don't know which Angel Guts movie it is in the set. Red Flash had already been released in another set that Third Window put out, but one of them's missing. There is an old Arts Magic DVD set that has that in there, but it's not in HD, and there's no HD print of that one, probably for that reason. But I did order it. I am interested in it. I've seen a couple of them, and I really like them. I like the Red Flash, and I've seen the one from 81, which is also great. Brandon Timmons, wow, had no idea the trail got a release. Great movie. What was the label that released that? It is this label, the same label that did Esprit de Mora, and this is Panorama, who releases a lot of the old Fortune Star stuff on Blu-ray. There's tons of them. Tons of the, if you could find a good import company that's not going to charge you too much, there is sites out there where they're not that too expensive, but it is expensive to ship. Nick from Flanders, darn, I almost forgot that Arrow was re-releasing Mr. Berman's Excalibur, easily one of the best sword and sorcery movies ever crafted. Nigel Terry is truly magnificent, magical as Arthur. He was made to play that part. I love him in that. Through the CGI is a bit dated. The movie sure ain't Justin Long. Oh wait, what's he say? He must be talking about Drag Me to Hell. Though through the CGI is a bit dated, the movie sure ain't. Justin Long is so good at playing obnoxious turds, typecasting maybe, haha. I think Justin Long is a good actor. I like him. Questions. Have you seen the new documentary Borman and the Devil about his misadventure with directing Exorcist 2? David Kitteridge, who also did a commentary for Heretic, made it. If yes, any thoughts? No, but he does a commentary in this one as well. I've not seen that. How do you feel about Mike Flanagan upcoming Exorcist movie? Excited, or the franchise Death Nil? I don't know. I didn't watch the newest one. And not that I think it's going to be horrible. I heard it was bad, but a couple of people liked it. I don't know. I just don't have much interest in it. I'm not a big kind of modern day sequel kind of guy or legacy sequel guy. Did you ever dream about being a knight of the Round Table? Not that I remember. Till next time, God willing, don't piss off any old gypsy ladies. You should run into one, cuz. I dreamed about being probably more of daydreamed about being in the Old West. Kurt144, Excalibur is one of my favorite films of all time. The armor, the costumes, the sound, the green colors or lighting they used, and you can't go wrong looking at beautiful Helen Mirren. I agree completely. Explosive action, Love Force 5 with fellow Aussie Richard Norton as the mortal line after throwing a saw at somebody. Thank God for Black & Decker. That movie's great. I love explosive action. Audio Love, 76. Claire Fulani is an actress in Meet Joe Black. She kind of came and went, but the first thing I remember her is in for Mallrats. I did see Mallrats, but I do not remember her. It's just I remember a female interest in the movie, but I can't remember her. Ilk Vomit, yes, Lam Ching Ying from Sammo Hung Classics, The Prodigal Son, and yes, also Mr. Vampire. There we go, way up, dude, gives you a smile, thank you. Vanessa Hex, great episode as always. Mountaintop Motel Massacre is one of my favorite movies of all time. I could ramble on and on and on, haha, sentimental memories. Stephen LeBlanc, I couldn't find Date with the Vampire Blood Craving anywhere. It took a bit to find it on the Internet Movie Database. I hope to find it one day. Drag Me to Hell was a disappointment. I saw The Wounded Man at a festival in '83. We all knew it as the La Homme Blessé. Terrible with French. Fire in the Sky is perhaps my favorite alien abduction film. Very real. So it's a good one. Broken and Bleeding. Here early at the gym listening to the newest episode of the saga of Mrparka's Tales. Thank you. Ken Coakley, 83, 66. I watched Mountaintop Motel Massacre last night and rather liked it. I liked the fact that it took place in one area in one night, like Night of the Living Dead, Evil Dead. I don't know how they didn't arrest her after the first killing. Me too. I was like, what? Come on! The place was also a dump. As for The Dead Zone, this is my favorite Stephen King book and one of my favorite King adaptations. Great cast as well. Walken, Lom, Skerritt, Brooke Adams, and unhinged Martin Sheen. They were all great. I agree. And also got Zerby in there. I loved how they built a mock-up of a Polish city that was occupied by Nazis. Dead Zone's a great film. A great, great film. And I think we're going to get into the pickups, which isn't too many, so I'm just going to do it like this. First and foremost, this one popped up on sale. 4K of Curse of Frankenstein, the Hammer movie, 1957. Classic movie. I think I underrated this when I first watched it. I've seen it a couple times, probably 2-3 times now, but I think it's a great movie. I just need to rewatch it again. I'll probably wait till around Halloween and pop in the Terrence Fisher Classic. And then next up, we have had a sale on these. It was like buy one, get one 50% off. So $17 for a 4K of Rabid from David Cronenberg, one of my all-time favorite Cronenberg movies. I love the Rabid, and I love that the original cover art's there. I love that cover art. Love Rabid, great film. And then we have one that I picked up as well. I had the Blu-ray from Vinegar Syndrome, but we got the Shout Factory 4K here. We got Fade to Black, also a really cool 1980 horror flick. Dennis Christopher, great actor, great performance, crazy movie. But yeah, that is my update, guys. I think we're out of here. Hey, guys, thank you very much for watching, and as always, have a good one.